But anyway, I'd like to welcome everyone to this launch webinar to launch the PERC Reporting Standard 2021. And this webinar has been organized for members of PERC and the PERC subcommittees and people who are the trustees and people who are on our list of observers. So it's really, if you like, a more internal PERC launch rather than a public one. But it's to inform you of the key features. All of the files are now on the website, which has also been updated because we've moved to a new provider for that. And at the end of this presentation, we can just have some discussion about the plans for promoting and communicating about the new standard. And I think Brenda will say something a bit about the LinkedIn plans as well at the end. Go to the next slide, Antonio. Yeah, so I'll just cover a bit of the background, then go through the PERC Reporting Standard 2021. What are some of the key features and changes, and sort of comparisons, a few comparisons with the CRIRSCO Template 2019 and the PERC Reporting Standard 2017. Let us say the promotion and adoption plan. And in case I forget, I think, I'm very pleased that we have a very professional looking set of documents on the website. And it's been very much a teamwork with lots of people involved. There's a list of most of them on the acknowledgements, but particularly mentions Steve Henley, who led the Standard Update Committee from the 2017 update till this year's AGM, and David Dingemans, who's taken over and got the thing to the end of the hurdle of the release. So we have the next slide. This is a diagram I've put. There's a version of this on the website, but it was just to highlight how sort of international and European standards have evolved and sort of leapfrog one another. So it's just for general information of people, highlighting the fact that European standards are being done in tandem with international ones. And we had the first, the European Reporting Code 2001, but the first that was referred to as PERC Reporting Code 2008, and then since then we've updated every 4 to 5 years, and this most recent update is sort of to get better alignment with the CRIRSCO template, which was updated in 2019. And yeah, just out of interest, to put on the two events, Poseidon Bubble and Bre-X scandal, that triggered a lot of the development of the codes and standards. Yeah, go to the next slide then. So I'll say the documents are available now to download from the website, which, as I said, has been redesigned and in the process of moving it to the new provider. We go to the next slide. And we sort of, the design has been of the PDF file is sort of set up so that if it could be printed out and be a very official looking, proper looking document. So I think it's building on what we've had before. It's I think very pleased that it's a very professional looking document. Hopefully the content is as professional as the look of the cover. Yeah, and it just has indicates that PERC is a member of CRIRSCO, and it gives the PERC legal details on the back of the front cover. Go to the next slide. Then that's the main contents of it. What you'll find is after a lot of fiddling with different software for processing PDF files, we have got a version where the page numbers are hyperlinked. So you should be able to be on the table of contents and jump to the page. And if you just hit the next, there should be an animation come in, Antonio. Well, anyway, yeah, there is a hyperlink. When you jump to parts of the content, there's a hyperlink on the top right of the pages that'll jump you back to the contents page. And I think it makes it very easy to navigate the PDF, that you can jump to a particular section, jump back to the table of contents. And I think you'll find that useful if you're trying to look through and find new content, so that when you go down to page 60 or 70, you don't suddenly have to page up all the way or go right back to the start. You can jump straight back to the contents. Then there are the 11 appendices, and then 2 tables. In this instance, I think we have the next slide. Yeah, there's again a list of the defined terms, all of which are the same defined terms as CRIRSCO, and as part of our membership, there are only very minor changes, if any, to the definitions, that we're not allowed to change anything drastically. There will be a discussion at the CRIRSCO AGM in 2 weeks' time on the standard definitions. And I will be putting a submission into them next week. But if people had pressing issues with particular definitions, you should let me know as soon as possible. Another document on the web page is that there's a 2-page summary of the definitions. So all of the definitions are in a 2-page summary document, which is a useful reference. I'm also going to encourage our participating organizations to maybe arrange to, as a first step, to get in information in other languages, to maybe translate the definitions into several of the other European languages. So we have that as a starting point for people to refer to, but we can talk about that at the end. If you go to the next slide. What should I say, although you'll find that table 1 is included in the main PDF file, in fact, the master version for table 1 is now in a workbook, and that is also available from the web page. It's been set up as group documents, and when you open it, you'll see there's some instruction in grey about how to group and ungroup things. But the important thing to note is there's a little set of numbers 1, 2, 3 in the top left. If you click on one, you'll just get the compressed version like that shown on the screen, which just has all the section headings. If you want to expand a particular section, you can go on the left and open those out. This was based on a version that Samarek originally prepared, so I'll say it's not totally our work, but it's trying to make table 1 a bit more navigable. And if anyone knows of a bright MSc student who'd like to make the whole thing interactive, let them get in touch. It would be a good university project, I think, to make it so that you could select and customize. But yeah, if you are going to print things out, I would warn you to click on the number 3 so that you have everything visible before you start printing things out. Yeah, I think that's the main thing with that. I think you can, as I say, you can download that and obviously use it as a basis for your own reports and preparation and so forth. We'll go to the next slide then, Antonio. So then this is our key features of it. It's the overall structure is based on the 2019 CRIRSCO template. The text of the CRIRSCO template was reviewed and edited for consistency, and there were some changes and adjustments on that. Then some key clauses that had been particular to 2017 version were added back in. I've already mentioned about table 1. Some significant changes. So there is quite a bit of editing of the text, but not really changing things, but trying to make things clearer rather than changing the sense of them. Under general reporting, there's a section added about reporting the risks and uncertainties, and there's additional guidance on ESG. There was a section entitled Sustainability in the CRIRSCO template, which has been renamed as ESG, just in order to highlight that we are trying to address that. But again, it's really not so many instructions about it, but quite a bit of guidance of what should be done in terms of ESG, and a section in table 1 as well, a sort of expanded section on environmental, social and governance in table 1. The principle that was in 2017 of impartiality is replaced by accountability, and we've retained exploration targets and exploration results are covered in the same section as they were in 2017. We've agreed a transition period for adoption to sort of allow people time to come to grips with all those, although you can start using it immediately, but we would advise that using PERC Reporting Standard 2017 after the end of next year would not not be in compliance with PERC reporting standard. Go to the next slide. Yeah, I'd say that rather than adopting the formatting of the CRIRSCO template, we stuck with the previous formatting that we had used, which you know, first was in the previous SAMREC and PERC versions. Oh, sorry, I've got this muddled. Yeah, that's okay. But yeah, that shouldn't really. Yeah. Sorry, no. The CRIRSCO template did change the formatting, although which was based on ours, but we stuck with our color coding in ours. So it's not entirely like the CRIRSCO template, but it does separate more clearly definitions, guidance, and code or standard clauses. In the CRIRSCO template, the commodity-specific content was moved to separate appendices. Separate new sections were added for modified factors, expiration targets, technical studies, or they were given more prominence. And then there were 4 new sections in the CRIRSCO template, which are also in the PERC Reporting Standard 2021, which is reporting metal equivalents, commodity pricing, permitting, and sustainability considerations. But as I said, we have renamed the sustainability considerations to environmental, social, and governance considerations. 2 other additions in the CRIRSCO template were these cement feed materials and structural materials and dimension stone. Both of those changes were sort of really taking things that had been in PERC reporting standard, which moved into the CRIRSCO template in 2019. Table 2 was an addition to the CRIRSCO template, which we have also added to the PERC reporting standard 2021. We go to the next slide then, Antonio. Yeah, well, yeah, so that's why I was getting confused on the last slide. Yeah, what I was going to say, we retained our formatting, but it still is in the same sort of general sense as the CRIRSCO template in trying to clearly distinguish between definitions, guidance, and if you like, the mandatory clauses. The text was reviewed, and you know, quite a bit of looking at that if must should be in the instructions, in the mandatory parts, and should in the guidance, to again make it easier, make it more consistent and easier for people where English is not their first language. And several additional clauses were added in several places in order to just give clearer instructions about particular aspects. If you go to the next slide, there's a minor change in the x-axis of figure 1, just putting consideration of the modified factors. That really is just to highlight that the modified factors is there as a defined term, and people should, as with the other terms on figure 1, people should go to the standard to look at the definition to get the full meaning, rather than trying to put all of the factors here on the x-axis. So it was just to simplify it with making it a little bit clearer. Yeah, the next slide. I say there was a minor change in the definition of modifying factors, which again was just to highlight that environmental, social, and governance aspects were changed. So I think the change is actually that governmental was changed to governance and regulatory, but it doesn't change the fundamental meaning of modifying factors. It just makes clearer that consideration of ESG is something that you should address when considering the modifying factors. The expiration targets, the CRIRSCO template has targets in the title. We did have quite a bit of discussion on that, whether we would continue with that or not. When we took that from the title, we then left expiration targets as a subsection in reporting expiration results. I'm aware that there are mixed opinions on this, and I'm preparing some thoughts on this to present to the CRIRSCO AGM about this, because I think expiration targets is seen in different ways by different people, and I think it needs either firmer guidance or some changes to the definition in order to make it clearer what it's intended to cover. If we go to the next slide, yeah, then some of the key, I think I already mentioned some of these, but impartiality replaced by accountability. The subsection on risks and uncertainties added. The guidance on environmental, social and governance considerations, and there was already one clause in the CRIRSCO template, but there's 2 extra ones in the PERC Reporting Standard 2021, and there's quite a few extra terms added to the glossary, to terms related to things like social license to operate and so forth are added to Appendix 10. And just, well, I did a tabulation of just the number of clauses in everything. I mean, there are well over 100 clauses altogether, but compared to the CRIRSCO template, PERC 2021 has a net addition of 27 clauses and reduction of 2 in the appendices. There was a little bit of duplication we found in the appendices. I think some of the things that are in the main permitting and legal thing were repeated in the CRIRSCO appendices. Just and then there are 4 PERC specific, well, they're not really commodity specific, but situation specific appendices were added, and there's extra clauses because of those. If you go to the next slide, then yeah, removal. So there had been a section on aggregation of estimates, but I think the main areas where that is of interest and required is industrial minerals and dimension stones. So aggregation is still allowed for the people in those particular commodities, but it's not included in the main text anymore. Non-public reporting was removed, but plan is to issue that as a separate document. The historical notes, just those will be provided via a link to the website. The list of RPOs, we've just updated that yesterday, but essentially there's not really any change to it, only a minor editorial one. I checked the Chilean Comisión Minera, and I think previously we'd said they were calling CPs competent qualified persons, but if you look at their website, it's now a competent person. So just it was a minor adjustment, no actual addition or removal of any qualifications from the list of RPOs. The rules of conduct and guidelines had been in the original previous CRIRSCO template and PERC standard, but that has been removed as I think it was felt that's not really part of a reporting standard, but CRIRSCO would still provide guidance to potential NROs on the sort of code of conduct and ethics that they should have. So there still are documents available on that, but they're not in the reporting standard. Yeah, if you go to the next slide. Yeah, and then just this is a plan provisional for how we try and promote it over the coming months. Well, obviously today is our official launch. As I said, the main purpose of today is to let people on the committee and who are involved in the subcommittees know the main points of the standard and that it is available so that you can inform your organizations and also your personal networks. What I would also say in terms of plans for further webinars, I mean, I would say that I would intend to prepare a webinar later in October based on this presentation now, but with a bit more detail of actually looking at some of the features of the standard. But if any of the PERC organizations want to organize their own webinar about it, then I'm happy to contribute to that, and I'm sure other members of the PERC executive or PERC standard update would be willing to contribute. So basically, rather than PERC organizing all the webinars, I think it'd be useful if the PERC member organizations would like to take the initiative there. But in October, December, we want to promote features. When I finish, Brenda will say a little bit about LinkedIn, how we're setting up a PERC LinkedIn forum. We will be open to organizing audience-specific webinars there. I'm thinking about for, say, companies who are using the PERC reporting standard who want to know a bit more detail. Again, that the details of all of that have to be worked out. There are 2 conference events coming up where we might look to do a presentation in parallel or around the same time, or at least to publicize something during those events and maybe hold it immediately afterwards. We're in discussion with the GSL about doing some online training in English in the first quarter of 2022, and that's fairly well advanced. And the suggestion would be that the training modules developed for the GSL course could be used for similar online training hosted by the EFG, but maybe offered in different languages and other course considered. And then, as I mentioned already, we've decided that from 1st of January 2023, usage of PERC Reporting Standard 2021 would become mandatory. If you go to the next slide, Antonia. Yeah, so these are the files available on the website. So there's a single document, contains everything, if you like, the main text, the appendices and tables 1 and 2. But the actual PDF, the master version, table 1, is in fact the workbook that is also provided on the website. There are the standard definitions as a separate document and the PERC list of RPOs. PERC Reporting Standard 2017 is also there. It's obviously further down the relevant web page rather than with the top. And the next slide, Antonio. And just as I say, just to finalize, as I say, it's been a work with input from an awful lot of people, particularly big thanks to Steve Henley, who led from the Standard Update Committee from 2017 to the AGM earlier this year, and David Dingemans, who's continued that work. And those are the present members of the Standard Update Committee listed there. There may be a few others who used to be on the committee who aren't listed. In terms of document presentation, well, Anita Stein is doing the design of the cover and also the new website. Ruth Allington sorted out the word formatting, which was a bit of a nightmare, and I'm still not sure some of the tricks she used to get things there, but it is like any large document, is quite temperamental when you start trying to adjust things in Word. And there were comments from a lot of other reviewers that the sections on ESG were reviewed by Teresa Steele-Schober and other SAM Codes members. And obviously we have Roger Dixon on the call, who's a member of the Standard Update Committee as well as SAM Codes. And we received comments from JORC as well, which we tried to go through those as well, and other comments from other current and former PERC and CRIRSCO members.